are joining us through Zoom. When you call for a vote or ask for questions, I must have a few seconds delay for the Zoom, and please give a quick moment to respond. And no one should be in here unless they're a presenter or a committee member. All right, we're good to go. We'll go with the agenda first is, oh, by the way, I will not be wearing my mask. I am so COVID antibodied, I can't give it, I can't get it, so I'm gonna sit here and be a free man today. First item on the agenda is Senate Bill 2827 for public purchases specifying pre-qualification process for construction manager at risk soliciting bids for projects. And our esteemed Senator Michelle is going to explain the bill. So, Senator, if you would, tell us what's going on with this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't exactly looking for another committee meeting to attend today. I've had 5 and chaired the insurance meeting this morning and served as in Senator Kirby's absence as pro tem. And then after lunch today, I was handed this bill and asked to present it for Senator Harkins. So I hope y'all will please go easy on me. I've studied it as hard as I can for the last hour that I've had. But if you'll help me rock this baby until Senator Harkins gets back, and then he can present it on the floor if y'all are kind enough to pass it forward. This legislation is in response to an unfortunate situation we had on construction of one of our buildings in Mississippi. And the main thing to remember is that this is a construction manager at risk contract, which deals only with construction of projects over $25 million. So this would be a very small number of projects in Mississippi, and what we want to prevent is another problem from happening that we had at the University of Mississippi Medical Center campus. On line 18, you'll see that the construction manager at risk must post a bond and complete the project within certain price parameters. It's basically a guaranteed maximum that the project will be completed within. And then, as important, on line 35, that it states that it must be separate contract for both design services and a separate contract for construction. And this would prevent, of course, a conflict of interest. As I mentioned a moment ago on line 71, it describes that it's only for projects that are $25 million or larger. The problem we had at University Medical Center was a subcontractor thought it'd be great to get involved in a project of this magnitude, and the sub simply could not perform, did not have experience on a project of this magnitude. You'll see a list of the reasons now that would pre-qualify the subs. That's on page 9 of the bill. So what we're doing is we're basically preventing that from happening before the subs are even chosen. We're making sure that the subs that would bid on the subcomponents of a project have already been vetted. That's the important thing to know on the front end. They've already been vetted. We have a couple of big projects coming up soon that we know that this will come in handy, and there's projects all the time on the Mississippi State campus. They're about to renovate the Humphrey Coliseum. We anticipate that will be over the $25 million threshold. At Ole Miss, there's a $90 million STEM building being constructed. The UMC has projects of this just about every other year, it seems like, on the UMC campus. And we've certainly got other collegiate campuses as well that I have not been made aware of that are projects, but we know of these two coming up in the next couple of years. I specifically talked to the Associated Builders and Contractors today. They're big behind this legislation, this American Subcontractors Association. IHL is in favor of this. Our universities and colleges and our Bureau of Buildings are in favor of this legislation. And I ask you to please keep this bill on track, if you will, for me, and then I'm going to gladly hand it over to Senator Harkins to handle on the floor, and he'll be back in time to do that if y'all see fit to keep this thing moving. Be glad to yield any additional questions. Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Polk. This bill is brought to me by the Department of Ag, Andy Gibson. And this was created, the Central Market Board was created in 1940s. It's outdated itself. They don't even meet anymore. It was developed for a wholesale market operation for farm products. It's now not even functioning. The DFA has taken over the property. It's on Woodrow Wilson, is where it's located. The bill would abolish the old Central Market Board, and it moves the powers to Department of Ag, so it can properly manage the farmers market on High Street. It's unbelievable what it looks like down there now. Andy has really done a good job. That's the brightest thing that I've seen in Jackson. If you go down here to the fairgrounds, it's looking really good. It ought to help Jackson in the future. But this will, it's going to allow them to operate a restaurant and make retail sales. And it was developed for wholesales of fish to begin with, but this will allow retail sales if this goes through. And I'm asking you for any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Do you have any questions? Do I have a motion? Title speech do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Bill passed. Thank you. Next, Senate Bill number 2043. State agencies require all chief financial officers and accountants to be employed by the DFA. This is Senator Johnson's bill, and I've asked him to come and explain it to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this bill, just as you stated, puts CFOs and accountants at state agencies, at most state agencies, under the umbrella of Department of Finance and Administration. There are some exemptions to that. The legislature, the judiciary, the governor's office, political subdivisions of the state, and also institutions of higher learning, including community or junior colleges, are all exempted. Otherwise, though, other state agencies would be required to, they could keep the same accountants or CFOs. They would just be employed by DFA and report to DFA. And that's an explanation of the bill.
Okay. You've heard the bill explained. Anyone have questions? Senator Blunt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Senator Johnson, if this bill becomes law, and I'm employed at a state agency and I'm a chief financial officer or an accountant, and I go to work every day in that office with the people at that board or commission or agency, and I'm hired by somebody there, my boss is there, my employer is now going to be DFA. And what does that do to my job status?
How do you mean?
Can I be fired?
By DFA?
That's my boss now. My boss has been whoever is, my immediate supervisor and ultimately the agency head or director of any board or commission. And if this bill passes, then Liz Welch at DFA is going to be my boss, and I report to her. Is that right?
That's correct.
What involvement currently does DFA have with the financial operations and accounting procedures of the 100 or so agencies and boards that we have? What oversight or responsibility, whether it's the Department of Agriculture or the Real Estate Commission or any of the dozens and dozens of agencies and boards that we have right now, what does DFA have to do right now in overseeing their financial operation?
So you may know more about this than I do, but my understanding is that they oversee the funds of the state, the accounts by which those agencies get to spend and monitor the appropriation amounts, as I understand it.
Well, it seems to me that if I was Liz Welch and every chief financial officer and accountant worked for me, that I would feel responsible for the financial goings-on at every single agency and commission in state government, because those are my employees, and I never see them. because I go to the Woolfolk Building every day and go to work in my office, but there are boards and commissions scattered all around, and I never see these people. I'm responsible for the money and the accounting of every agency and board in the state because they're my employees. I mean,
I can't say that she sees every employee that she has now either. And there's nothing to say that she does not have oversight. Any large corporation can have oversight over people with geographic hurdles much greater than we have here in Jackson or the state of Mississippi.
But she has no oversight. It's not really. Her job is to run that agency, and I want to be clear. I think she does a great job running that agency, but she doesn't need to stay up nights worrying about the Oil and Gas Board or the Motor Vehicle Commission or anything else. But now she hires and fires all those people in all those agencies and is responsible for the bookkeeping in all those agencies. I mean, have you talked to the DFA about this? Are they comfortable taking this on?
I don't know if they're comfortable with taking it on or not.
Oh.
But I would also say, though, that I can't say whether she'd have sleepless nights or not. And we're
And I
assuming
would.
then that somebody's taking responsibility now.
The agency head or the commission head who works in that building with that person is responsible for running that agency or that board. And if something isn't done right, and if the auditor goes in there and something isn't done right, that person's responsible.
That's correct.
So, do we have any idea how many people we're talking about?
No.
And you don't know whether DFA is for or against the bill?
I've spoken with Liz or Ms. Welch, but I have not asked her if she's comfortable with it. It was not my intent to bring it out based on her comfort level with it.
Okay, thank you.
Turn it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I may be out of my lane here, but this is the thought that I have. And how does this affect pins that are given to the various agencies?
It's my understanding that the pins associated with the accounting and the accounting jobs would be transferred to DFA, along with the pay associated with that.
And what about these employees, the oversight that would go along with them being under the State Personnel Board? Is that affected in any way?
I'm not sure what DFA is currently, but it would be the same as DFA is currently.
Who wants this bill passed?
No one asked me to drop this bill.
This is just by your
Yes.
observation. So what is the issue that you're attempting to address by the introduction of this bill?
Yep, so my experience has been that some agencies and boards are much better at giving you good and accurate information timely than others. And I would like some consistency with getting that information. I believe that if we had it all under one umbrella, not answerable to the executive director of a certain agency or board, then we may be able to get better data faster than we do now.
And I believe that Senator Blunt asked you about the number of people, but how many agencies are actually going to be affected if this legislation is passed?
May I get you that count? I don't have that with me now, but I'll get that for you.
So at this point, we do not know if this legislation is passed, we do not know the impact that it's going to have on DFA?
No, and I'm very open to the logistical part of DFA, how we can make it as easy for Ms. Welch and DFA as possible. But no, it's hard to gauge what that's going to look like.
And this, I'm not sure about this question, but I'm going to ask it because this is what I'm thinking. In terms of the accounting practices and the way that these agencies manage their finances, do we know that they're all using the same type of program or software?
Most are. Most are on the same system. There are a few that are not. So the Department of Transportation is not on the same program as most of the rest of the state. I think there's one or two more that may not be.
And if adopted, this would be effective July 1, 2021?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator McDaniel? Could you get to a microphone, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions, perhaps to help alleviate some of the concern Senator Blunt shared. The contractual relationships that these individuals have with the state, those remained unchanged, don't they? They would be entitled to the same protections they have now, correct?
Yes, I think some of them will be in agencies that are not under the personnel board. I'm not sure if the DFA is, but if they are, then they would all be under the personnel board, or they will all not.
That makes,
Everything else.
everything else remains the same. Your bill wouldn't address any of that stuff, would it? As I understand it, it seems reasonable to me, but you tell me if I'm wrong, this would just make things more efficient, wouldn't it? I do too. Then you're an accountant, so you know something about this. All right, thank you. No further questions.
Senator Blackwell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think with all the questions or the lack of answers, I guess, with some of the questions, I'd like to make a motion at the proper time.
Any other questions? If not, your motion.
Move to table.
Motion is to table. Who was wanting to speak on that?
As I understand it, that would be a killing motion, would it
Who
not?
would be?
I have a substitute motion to make then, Mr. Chairman, if possible. If we're going to table it, let's at least have it subject to call so the questions can be answered and then bring this back up at a subsequent meeting.
Oh, just a minute. Move to table, take precedence.
Okay.
Okay, you
What-
ready?
May I speak on the motion?
You can.
I think my position would be, I would ask the members to at least vote no on the motion to table, so I can then offer a second motion, which would be a motion to table subject to call. That would at least give us a chance to answer these questions and keep the bill alive for a couple of more days so Senator Johnson can move forward.
Okay.
So I would just ask that you vote no on this.
Anybody else want to speak on?
May I?
Let's- Senator Blackwell first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any problem with Senator McDaniel's offering, so I would.
Withdraw your motion.
Can I withdraw my motion?
Okay, you can.
So moved then.
Okay. Senator McDaniel?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, Senator Blackwell. My motion would be to lay this on the table subject to call.
Okay. Motion is lay on the table, subject call. Anyone like to speak?
Yes, sir. Thank you, and I appreciate you withdrawing that. The intent is, obviously, if you're satisfied with how, with the data you get from every agency now, then this would not be necessary. If you're not, though, this was a conceptual idea I had. I looked. No other state does anything like it. It would be wading into new territory. I get that. And perhaps we need to work on it and study it for future. But I would ask you if you have any frustrations or believe that we could do accounting in the state better across all agencies, I would ask you to at least help me find ways that would make it work effectively.
All those in favor of the motion as stated, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Lay it on the table, subject to call. Next, Senate Bill number 2098. This is a repealer, an extending of the repealer on the, yes, Board of Funeral Services. We can't let that go. We've got to have it. So this bill just extends the repealer until 2025. Are there any questions? If not, do I have a motion? Title sufficient to pass. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Ooh, 2188's here. Okay, the next is item Senate Bill 2188, revised reporting requirements from personnel's actions are exempted from the State Personnel Board of Procedure. I believe this is a peer bill issued or authored by our Senator Chasnaw, and we have Ray Wright from peer to explain to us what this bill does. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this bill is based on two recommendations that came out of some research done for the peer committee on the impact of agencies being granted exemptions from SPB purview. This would have prospective changes to an existing code section that would add a requirement that when these agencies request this information, in addition to providing the information that's already required in this bill section, it would also require them to provide quantifiable measures that would show not only what the changes are that they have made while under this exemption, but how those have increased the efficiency and effectiveness of the agencies that they were granted for. The second one would be a change to the code section that would require these existing reports that are already, the reports are already required under state law, be additionally filed with the peer committee, with ELBO, and with the State Personnel Board. These agencies are all agencies that would routinely be asked to, address or assess questions of this nature, and so having that information available would be helpful in answering those questions in the future. And that is the changes.
So it's an accountability measure.
Yes, sir. It's an additional accountability measure to build on the kind of safeguards that the legislature already established in this code section.
Questions from our senators? Do I have a motion? Title sufficient to pass. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Okay. We ready to go? Yours? Do what? Okay. We will pass on 2423 right now and go to 2511. Salary cap exempt attorneys employed by the Attorney General's office. We have from the Attorney General's office Kyle Williams, and he will explain the bill to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Senate Bill 2511 is a bill that this committee passed a version of last year and then went on to pass on the Senate floor. It was embedded within a bill that would have removed the Office of the Attorney General from the purview of the Personnel Board for a year. And so if you recognize the language, that's where it's from. So this bill would exempt our attorneys that are employed within our office from the pay cap that is established at Section 25.339, subsection 2, which says that an agency employee cannot earn more than the agency head. So over the past year, we've had significant issues recruiting and retaining experienced attorneys, particularly those in specialized practice areas. And so primarily we see that it's because of a pay disparity. Currently, we have immediate needs to hire attorneys, experienced attorneys primarily. For example, in the employment law sector, we have several cases that are pending where we're representing state agencies in various types of employment matters. And because we've lost some of our attorneys to primarily to other state agencies and other governmental bodies, we don't have currently the representation to be able to handle all of those matters. And so it's a real need, particularly in that area, but also in general litigation. It would be great to have a tax attorney. We've had to go outside and retain a tax attorney on behalf of several state agencies recently. So these are just examples of the more specialized areas where we have needs to be able to attract and recruit some attorneys. So as I mentioned, many other state agencies, district attorneys' offices, the U.S. Attorney, are all able to pay their attorneys more than we are because the head of our agency is a statewide elected official. Her salary is set forth by statute, and so therefore we can't exceed that. And so we've lost attorneys to other state agencies, we've lost them to other state bodies, and then certainly a few over to the federal sector, simply because of pay. I want to be clear that if we're authorized to do this, we're not looking to make any across-the-board pay raises. This would be deployed only to recruit or retain. It would be used very sparingly. I know that Chairman Hobson is joining virtually. We don't anticipate any additional appropriation because of this. So it's not going to be widely used, but our hands are sort of tied in a lot of ways for these more specialized practice areas, and so we would use it very sparingly. There are various safeguards kind of in place, and I know that we have several attorneys that are on our staff, and so we've identified at least 3 separate safeguards. So the first, according to the statute as it's currently written, because there's already a couple of exceptions within this subsection for other professionals, and so before we're allowed to pay anyone more than the Attorney General currently makes, which is $108,960. The State Personnel Board, and I'm reading from the statute, must first determine that the acquisition of someone with the same level of expertise is precluded based on the prevailing wage in the relevant labor market. So we can't just do this on our own. It has to be approved by the State Personnel Board with specific findings of fact for each individual attorney. In addition, in subsection 1 of the statute, there's an additional pay cap, and that is that no state employee can make more than 150% of the governor's salary. And so that would certainly be the ceiling, but we would never anticipate to get anywhere near that amount. Finally, and I think it's obvious, our office is obviously limited by our appropriation. And so we would certainly be responsive to the legislature through our appropriation for any payments that we make above the cap. Just as a note, the insurance department can do this I think theirs might even be more broad, related to more widely professionals. So I think that encompasses attorneys and then additional professionals. And just kind of as a note, if we're able to get this, the hope is that it will allow for eventually a reduction in outside counsel reliance, because if we have the experts in-house on staff, and we have an employment lawyer, or we have a tax lawyer, or we have a redistricting lawyer, we had to go outside and spend significant funds recently for a redistricting lawyer, because we just don't have anyone in-house that can do that. And so the idea is if we can recruit the talent and keep them in-house, that hopefully we would be able to go outside less.
Thank you. Questions? Anyone? Do I have a motion? Title sufficient to pass. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Senate Bill 2544, University of Mississippi Medical Center, create a joint committee to study the organization. Senator Thompson, I believe, that's your bill. If you would explain it to us, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 2544 would create a joint committee to study the organization of the University of Mississippi Medical Center. Currently, the UMMC is under IHL, and we just want to take a look and see whether or not there are anything structural that we can do with the organization of UMMC to see if we can improve the level of care and what's available there for patients and for the state. Just to go over it real quick, the bill provides that the committee would report to the legislature by December of this year. The committee will be made up of 11 voting members and 3 ex officio members, all appointed by the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker of the House. That would include the chairman of both chambers' University and Colleges Committee, the chairman of both chambers' AET Committee, a member of the Senate appointed by the Lieutenant Governor, a member of the House appointed by the Speaker, and it includes some, I would call them market participants, I guess, a member who is members who would be current or former chief executive officers of a hospital, 2 of those, each one appointed by the Lieutenant Governor and 1 appointed by the Speaker, and 3 members with healthcare and business experience, 1 appointed by the Governor, 1 appointed by the Lieutenant Governor, and 1 appointed by the Speaker. University of Mississippi, the Chancellor of UMMC, or his designee, the Vice Chancellor of UMMC, and the Commissioner for IHL will also serve as ex officio non-voting members. Turning to the bill, on lines 68 to 71, it originally included language that we would have an outside agency or exactly what it said. That we would have an outside contractor perform that initial peer review up to $500,000. At the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, offer an amendment to strike lines 68 to 72. The initial review will be performed by peer. Peer will provide the staff and other support necessary for the study committee.
If you would make your amendment now, then we get a clean bill to be talking about.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Chairman, I move that we amend 2544 to strike beginning on line 68, subject to an appropriation, all the way through the end of line 72.
Okay. You've heard the motion of an amendment. Any questions on the amendment? Senator, turn forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Thompson, could you just explain the effect of the amendment?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Could we limit the questions to the amendment, which is
Right,
cutting out the consultant?
Right, that's what I don't understand.
okay, I'm sorry.
What's the effect of that?
Rather than the bill providing for the $500,000 to be paid, that could have been paid to a contractor, peer is going to be performing peer will be providing the staff and other support for the study committee.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator, I apologize. I didn't understand what. Okay, any other questions about the amendment? Okay. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, motion carries. Now we're back on the bill. Questions on the bill? Senator Hill?
I guess my question would be to go back to when you explained what the purpose of this is. Why would they not be able to provide services under IHL? Or why could they provide services if they're not under IHL, if they're restructured, that they can't provide now? I don't understand what the difference is. I mean, they're an academic medical center. Why would you take them out from under IHL?
Well, and that's a very good question. And the reason, one of the things that we've looked at in coming up with this bill was a recent report from the Association of American Medical Colleges that discussed some of the benefits of these academic medical centers operating on their own. And if you look at, and I've got that report if you'd like to take a look at it.
You're just looking for autonomy, basically.
Autonomy.
Based on,
Yes,
based on the report from where they've studied these across the country.
Yes, Senator.
I understand now. Thank you.
Okay. And I think just real quick on that point, if you look at, for example, UAB was taken out from underneath their version of IHL. I'm looking here for it. And that is a fantastic medical center there in Birmingham. It's totally revitalized the downtown Birmingham area, and it's all based around that UAB system. And that was one of the examples that stuck out to me.
I understand. Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Blunt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question, but I would like to offer an amendment at the proper time.
Okay. You may go ahead and offer your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment would be on lines 32 through 35 to increase the number of appointments available to the Lieutenant Governor from 1 to 2, and to increase the number of appointments to the Speaker from 1 to 2, and to change line 23 from 14 to 16.
You've heard the motion or the amendment. Questions? Anyone?
No, sir.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Amendment carries. Any more questions on the bill?
Mr. Chair.
Senator.
Thank you. Senator Hobson here. A question for Senator Thompson is, what is the reason for taking out the medical center for this kind of analysis when you have a lot of other entities that fall under our university systems that could be also taken out for the same analysis?
I agree with you, Senator, that there are probably other systems we could look at as well. The reason for this first brush, and keep in mind, this is just to form a joint committee to study the current UMMC situation, is that it's our only teaching hospital right now, and that's what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Hobson. Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
That was sufficient to pass committee sub.
Sufficient to pass committee sub. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it. We'll move forward. Next is Senate Bill 2689. The state auditor increases fee. We passed this bill last year. The state auditor intends to raise his hourly fee for the audits of local government, county governments from $35 an hour to $50 an hour. It sounds like we're hurting the counties, but in actuality, it helps because if they have to have a private audit, and he only gets around to 20 or 25 counties a year, the private audit has to be done each year by a CPA firm, which in effect charges, as everyone knows, $100 an hour or so. So actually, even though we're raising the state auditor fee, it's still a bargain as compared to who gets to do the audit. We passed this bill last year. It moved to the House, and because of our COVID issues and all, it seemed to die. So are there any questions about what our bill does? Senator Turner Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the audit still be limited to the 25 per year? Or would they be audited?
There is no actual limit, but that's about all he can get to.
So the accommodation would be the same?
I'm sorry?
The auditor's ability to audit the local governments would still remain at 25 or so?
He's hoping that it might be able to increase the number to be able to do more state audits and not have to hire the CPA firms.
Thank you.
Other questions? Motion title sufficient to pass. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next is Senate Bill number 2797. Department of Public Safety revise the authority, adjust trooper salaries, and make technical amendments. I hope we have Commissioner Tyndall with us via, yeah, he's with us. Okay. Senator, if you would, excuse me. I think I just improved your status of life, but Commissioner, would you please explain your bill to us, please?
Yes, sir. Hello, everyone, and appreciate the committee and the chairman for bringing up the bill. All right, this bill is somewhat of a global bill, deals with a lot of issues that I've identified at the Department of Public Safety and things that we're asking to hopefully improve our efficiencies. In section 1, you'll see that it identifies MBI as an official division at DPS. The director of MBI would still remain to be a lieutenant colonel with the Mississippi Highway Patrol. MBI is mentioned in other statutes, but it's never identified as a specific division in our statute. So we wanted to add that as a division. In addition, in this bill, it adds Capitol Police as a division of the Department of Public Safety. just took up a bill in Judd A that also kind of deals with the moving Capitol Police over to DPS. I can tell you that I believe the Lieutenant Governor is supportive of that, and I've talked to the Speaker about it, as well as the Governor and Liz Welch over at DFA. So that's also in this bill as it was originally. The bill also requires the Commissioner of Public Safety to have at a minimum a bachelor's degree from accredited university or college. Also in section 1, it codifies that the Office of Homeland Security. Homeland Security was created by an executive order of the governor. It borrows the language from that executive order and puts that in there, as well as adds language dealing with cybersecurity and cyber enforcement to the Office of Homeland Security. If you go to section 2, it deals with transferring some of the law enforcement authority from the Capitol Complex to DPS, so it's all in line with the transfer of Capitol Police to DPS. Section 3 gives the Commissioner of Public Safety the ability to administer oaths. The Commissioner already administered oaths to railroad agents. We learned that in the past, it has administered the oath to troopers upon graduation of the Trooper Academy, but it was never actually codified, so we thought it would be pertinent to add that in there. In section 4, it includes the Commissioner of Department of Public Safety as a law enforcement officer. That's never actually been designated, although it oversees multiple state law enforcement agencies. It also allows me within the department to designate some of the directors and some of the part-time employees that have law enforcement duties as law enforcement officers. And that is similar language to what is granted to the Commissioner at the Department of Corrections. Section 5, it broadens the purpose of MBI. There's already a provision that allows for contract agents at MBI and MBN. Section 5 broadens that to make it clear that we can also have contract agents that can be authorized to work with other state agencies. I can give you an example. Recently, the Department of Human Services, and I know they've got some legislation authorizing them to have law enforcement officers within the Department of Human Services. But there are also other agencies that need that from time to time. Under this scenario, they would be able to go out, hire perhaps a sheriff's deputy or an investigator from a local police department, have them come work for them. We would certify them as law enforcement under MBI. They would be contract agents assigned to those particular divisions, but they would also have a law enforcement member from MBI overseeing their work to make sure it complies with all the things that it needs to. Also in section 5, it gives MBI exclusive jurisdiction to investigate all instances of officer-involved shootings. We typically do most of them now. That's done because when there is an officer-involved shooting, there are conflicts with the local law enforcement actually investigating themselves. And so most of the time, MBI is called in to do those investigations. And this just codifies that. It also, it would give us the ability to, I won't say dictate, but also regulate some of the information that does come out when it comes to getting information to the press, and try to do that in a consistent manner across the state when that happens. It also allows for the AG to be the prosecutorial agency that handles officer-involved shootings. Again, you have conflicts on the local level. I mean, your local PDs are typically working with the DA, and by allowing the AG to be the prosecutorial agency that handles that, you remove that conflict. In section 7, it talks about MBN contract agents. It's the same language. In section 8, it exempts DPS from the personnel board, some of the regulations on hiring contract pathologists. There are some services right now that are exempt from having to get approval for example, on bid laws, engineers, lawyers, and we're simply trying to add pathologists so that we can bring contract pathologists to the medical examiner's office. As it stands now, they got to go through a long bid process, and there is a limited number of pathologists, particularly forensic trained pathologists that can assist with the autopsy backlog that we have, and so it will help us process those as well as some of the equipment that we need when we're buying medical equipment for the medical examiner's office. Section 9 clarifies and codifies us being able to utilize medical examiner investigators. We have those in the counties now, and those are your coroners. We want to bring them in-house to assist with the autopsy and hopefully be able to go out and testify in criminal cases as to the cause of death when it would be appropriate. So that's what that does. We've gotten broad support in trying to do that. Section 10 is, we recently had an issue come up. Whenever we hire the chief medical examiner, it requires a 2/3 vote of not just myself hiring them, the commissioner. It also requires a 2/3 vote of the dean of the law school, dean of the med school, and the state health officer, and that is to hire or terminate the chief medical examiner. Under this bill, that requirement will be removed. It still maintains the panel that can advise the commissioner, but it removes that hurdle. I can tell you that I think by January 31st, the chief medical examiner is in fact resigning, and I have his letter of resignation on my desk, which I have accepted. So going forward, I think it would ease that process and give us greater ability to make sure things are flowing as they should there. In section 11, it authorizes the medical examiner investigators can also assist with the autopsy. It just makes it clear that although they're not doctors, they can assist with doing the autopsies and the autopsy reports, but ultimately the pathologist would have to sign off on it. Section 12 removes the repealer for the state medical examiner fees that are charged when they do autopsies. Section 13 removes chief from the title of the state medical examiner. That's really just a technical change because the language wasn't consistent with the statute. Section 14 amends the requirements for trooper school. As it stands now, you have to be 21 with 60 hours of college credit, or anybody can attend to 23. This would simply allow anybody that's 21 years old that qualifies to go to trooper school. It does away with that 60 hours of college credit requirement if they're under the age of 23. Section 15, which I believe the chairman has an amendment to make on this. It originally removed the 80-day minimum for training of cadets at trooper school. I believe the new language will state that it will maintain the 80-day minimum except for certified law enforcement officers who have 2 years of experience may be able to attend a trooper school that is less than 80 days as determined by the commissioner at the Department of Public Safety. Section 16 through 20 deal with unmanned aircraft systems, and particularly the flight of drones over correctional facilities, trying to limit their ability, if they do want to fly in contraband, that does constitute a felony and violations. And if they're trying to film inside the correctional facility, it can do the same thing. Section 21, again, dealing with language from DPS, it changes from DFA to DPS. Section 22, again, dealing with the changes to Capitol Police to DPS. And I think that is most of the bill. Be glad to answer any questions anybody has.
At first, for clarification, you mentioned an amendment that would have appeared in section 15. That got into the committee substitute, so we won't have to have an amendment for that. Now, are there any questions for the commissioner? Senator Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just probably a correction or clarification. In section 16, line 1049, says sections 15 through 19 of this act shall be known and referred to as the Mississippi Unmanned Aircraft Systems Protection Act. But I think that's supposed to be section 16. So if that's correct, I'd like to offer an amendment to correct line 1049, change the 15 to 16, line 1052, 15 to 16, and then line 1112, section 19, to have that 15 to 16.
But the amendment is to get it technically correct with the lines. Any questions about the amendment? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Amendment carries. Other questions? Senator Turner Ford.
I hate to ask my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going back to line 90, where it says that the commissioner shall have at a minimum a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university.
Yes, ma'am.
And do we really want to preclude someone who might have a long-standing career in the military or who has been with the department 20, 25 years from being promoted to commissioner? And the reason I say that is you could very well be appointed to the federal bench, and the position that you hold could be vacated. So I'm just wondering, you know, do we want to prohibit or limit, you know, someone who could have gained experience over the course of their career that could possibly serve in this position?
I've thought about that a lot, Senator, and I can tell you that, and it was hard for me to appreciate when I was there just how massive this agency is and the credentials that it really does take to run it. I think it's massive, and I think making sure that whoever is running it has obtained certain qualifications in their life is important. Not to say that there aren't very capable people that possibly could run it, but I think we have to be very careful that who we point there and make sure they're not just political appointments, if you will. It needs to be somebody that's highly qualified, and not that I'm any more qualified than anybody else that's ever held this seat, but there are a lot of problems that we're trying to unravel at DPS, and I think who's sitting in that chair at the top, it matters, and I don't think it's asking too much that they've done what they've needed to obtain those credentials throughout their life, and so I do think it's important.
And I didn't mean to cast any aspersion on your qualifications, because I really meant what I said. You could easily be appointed to something else, but thank you.
And look, and I'll say this, I mean, my dad was one of the smartest business people I've ever known, and he didn't graduate from college. He didn't graduate from high school. He went to World War II, and he probably could have ran this thing with ease. And, you know, I know a lot of very successful people that are that way. I just think it's one of those things that it just ensures that the people that are sitting there understand, you know, what they're doing. They can handle the subject matter. It can be very intense. There's a lot of reading. There's a lot of math. You have to conceptually deal with a lot of things. And so I just think it's an important qualification to have there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Other questions? Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Senator Polk. Commissioner Tindall, thank you. You and your car?
My son made the middle school baseball team. I have not been able to come and watch him play since he started, and so I'm sitting in the parking lot watching him, I think, just miss a ground ball. So.
Okay, good for you. I have a couple of questions. First, about Section 6, which is the officer-involved shooting section. What's the current law on who has the authority to prosecute a case like this? What-
It's the local district attorney's office, and in situations where they feel like there's a conflict, they many times hand it off to the attorney general to handle. Here's my concern. From what I've seen, and I guess we can just honest conversation with it.
Yep.
When there is a bad shooting, they hand it off to the AG's office. When everything appears to them to be okay, then they go ahead and handle it themselves. I think it's better if the AG's office is the one that's looking at it from the very beginning across the board. And that way you have that independence of review. It's coming from Jackson. It's not coming from the local DA's office that handles cases with those police chiefs and sheriffs every day, every month, 12 months a year. So I think it gives that extra layer of independence, and it's really the same reason they call NBI, and it makes sense that the AG's office also handles it. Now, I haven't talked to the Prosecutors Association, but I have talked to some of the DAs that I know, and the ones that I did talk to are supportive of it, and they also feel like it makes sense. And again, it also allows us, and I've ran into this recently, that we had an officer involved shooting in the city of Biloxi 2 weeks ago Friday. And the question becomes, what information should come out to the public? How quickly should it come out? What information we can and can't release? You've got, I think it's 21 or 22 district attorneys across the state, and they all do things very different. It will assist us in coordinating with the Attorney General's office to say, this is the timeline in which we will try to release information, so that we're consistent in how it's done and how the public is informed and the family's informed as to what's happening with the case as it progresses.
Thank you. What's this drone stuff doing in this bill?
It was Homeland Security. The officer of Homeland Security had requested it. We were doing, global EPS bill. We asked our agency heads or division heads if they had anything they wanted in there. It was something Homeland Security had requested, and that's why it's in there. As you know, the FFA, Federal Aviation Association, regulates drone flights, and you have to be careful how you word it. That's why the language is as it is if they are trying to, it's okay to fly it, but when you start trying to film over the correctional facility or you start trying to bring in contraband, it creates that crime. And as you know, recently, I think we've had to put up, I think nets around correctional facilities trying to catch drones. And after those were called, apparently they got somebody with a rocket arm to throw a football full of stuff over the fence. So it's just trying to prevent that.
But if I have a drone, I'm looking at line 1085, and I fly my drone, and I don't have a drone, but if I did, and I fly it over a facility, I don't know what that means, a facility enclosed by a fence. What does that mean? This just covers correctional facilities, right?
That's the intent of the bill.
Okay. And I don't have any problem at all with that.
Correctional facility means it defines the correctional facility in lines 1051 of the bill I'm looking at. I think the lines might have moved around with the committee substitute.
Okay.
But the beginning of section 17.
I assume this is some national checklist of things we don't want drones flying over?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
We've got some model language that we use.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Turner Ford.
It's not a question, Mr. Chairman, but I'd like to offer an amendment at the appropriate time.
You may offer your amendment now.
My amendment would start at line 92, and just for the sake of having a complete sentence, I'll just start at line 90. The commissioner shall have, at a minimum, a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university, or any amount of experience, knowledge, and skills that will enable the appointee to perform the tasks of the position.
Questions on the amendment? Okay. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, no. Motion does not carry. Any other questions? Oh, a division, I'm sorry. Division. All those in favor of the amendment, raise your right hand. 1, 2. Yeah, get it right, David. 1, 2. That's 2. All those opposed, raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. Motion does not carry. Amendment does not carry. Any other questions? Do I have a motion? Committee sub. Okay. Motion is titled sufficient to pass, committee sub. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, Senator. Tyndall, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, next, we're going to skip over item 2820, move to 2824, which is state agencies require annual reporting of pass-through money from line-item appropriation for the legislation. This is from Chairman Hobson, and he is online with us. And if you would, please, sir, explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As most of you know, there are a lot of line items that are included in appropriations bills, and there have been some questions as to the success of some of those line items and what they're doing, what folks are doing with the dollars that they receive. So this is an attempt to show accountability and transparency as it relates to those. What this would do is require the state agency that's receiving those line items, and they pass them along to another group. They would enter into an agreement with that group, whichever group it is that contracts with them, as to the plans for that. And then annually, and again at the end of the use of the funds, they'll do a final report then. They do reports to make sure that we're getting our bang for our buck as a state. Those reports will be given from the state agencies. Actually, they'll be notified. The pass-through group would be notified by the state agency of this obligation to complete the reports. Those reports then in turn would be given back to the agency, who in turn would give them to the Lieutenant Governor, the Speaker, and the two chairs of the Appropriations, House and Senate. There are some exceptions, if you'll see on lines 62 through the end of the bill, and because this came up this past year with something about whether or not they had to go through a competitive process, and it does say that they are not required to comply to the extent that it's issued under a competitive award process in accordance with the formula enacted in the statute, in accordance with the state program, or as it relates to MAP. So that's an explanation of the bill, Mr. Chairman. I'll be happy to yield the questions.
Thank you, Senator. Questions? Do I have a motion?
Title sufficiently passed.
Title sufficient to pass. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Chair.
Next is Senate Bill 2189. Counties and municipalities authorized to offer Medicare-eligible employees supplemental compensation if employees secure Medicare. This is Senator Hill's bill, and I would like for her to explain it, please.
Get this mic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Association of Supervisors has requested that we give the Board of Supervisors the authority to allow an employee who is age appropriate for Medicare to be able to choose Medicare and declare that during open enrollment so that they could move from the county insurance over to Medicare. And the counties believe that it would be a cost savings to them if they would be able to give a supplement to that employee for the Medicare supplement that they would need in lieu of their insurance coverage, what they pay per month for insurance coverage. And they have sent some numbers to Senator Polk and I showing the savings that they could achieve if they had employees who wanted to voluntarily go into Medicaid and be able to get a supplement, and the supplement could not exceed what they're paying for that particular employee for the insurance policy that they are on, and it would not require or make anybody choose that. It would just give them the option. and they would have to provide proof that they had the coverage to the counties for them to receive that benefit.
You've heard the explanation. Questions, Senator Blunt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hill, is this just going to put more Mississippians on a federal government health care program?
If they so choose to, they're eligible for it. That ought to be their decision.
I agree with you.
But they would also have the gap coverage or Part D or whatever they needed to go with that, paid for by the county in lieu of what the county's paying for their medical insurance. So it would be strictly voluntary. We're just giving the county the authority to do this.
Any other questions? Senator Turner Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, have you received information that this is unauthorized at this point? Is this just to make it clear?
They tell me they need this legislation, and this is like a national model legislation that other entities are moving to when their employees are eligible. Basically, it can save the employees money because they can get the supplement, and what their part of the insurance that they're paying besides what the employer's paying, it would basically save the taxpayers money on the county side, plus it would probably some cost savings for what that person is paying in for their county insurance. So they think it's a cost savings all the way around.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Other questions? If not, do I have a motion?
Title sufficient, do pass, committee sub.
Title sufficient to pass, committee sub? It's not? Okay. Title sufficient to pass.
Oh, title sufficient, do pass.
Okay. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Hold on just 1 second. Okay. Do I have a motion? Rise and report. All those in favor say aye, aye. No, no, we're done.